patient fireside chat is because patients are at the center of drug development. Last year, when we held this meeting, we heard from a lot of you in the room that you wanted to hear more about the lived experience of CMT. So this year, we have assembled a fine group of panelists who have the disease in their family. Some of them are living with it. Some of them have children with it. And I welcome you all to the stage now. And as you're making your way up, we've got a step over here. We've got a ramp over there. And I know we're going to have hands on both sides to help those of you who need to get up. Awesome. Thank you. But as they're coming up, I would like to make the introductions. I really first want to say, though, that for all of you drug hunters in the room, please ask us your honest questions. The panelists here today agreed to be on this panel so they could help you understand what's important to them, but also we really wanted, we want to engage with you. We want to know, what are your most pressing questions about CMT? So please ask us honestly. If you don't get the opportunity to ask us today at this panel, please ask us. The panelists will be here both all day today and all day tomorrow. Pull us aside, ask us our questions about what it's like living with CMT. Because we're here to answer your honest questions. Sometimes it's a little embarrassing to ask them in a group, but please don't hesitate to ask one-on-one if you'd like that. So we obviously have a huge sense of urgency in our community. I would like to start by introducing the panel to you. First, I'm going to start with Sital, Bhavsar. Sital lives in New York City. She's an anesthesiologist by profession. Her daughter has a de novo diagnosis of CMT2A. Sital decided to get involved and felt the best way to do so was with advocacy. She's a board member of the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation, and she's encouraged by all the advances in research and technology for treatments. And you can see on the screen Sital's daughter there. Next, we have Lily Sander. And Lily is a 16-year-old patient from Fort Mill, South Carolina. She was diagnosed with 2 rare mutations. She has CMT1E and HNPP. And she was diagnosed when she was 4 years old. She's grown up advocating for herself, and she's helped educate others about the importance of speaking out in various disability arenas. This commitment to advocacy has led Lily to start her own nonprofit and raise awareness for other issues that are close to her heart. And with the support from her family, Lily has found the strength to be a part of the change to the disease, the end of a disease, which has impacted her life so greatly. So thank you, Lily, for being here. Michelle Moon is a neurologist and a palliative care doctor living in the Seattle area. Michelle's daughter, Juliana, died in 2016 at the age of 5 from a severe form of CMT. I think we've got a picture of her coming up here in a moment. She has advocated for CMT by telling her daughter's story on various platforms. And when their story went viral, she used that opportunity to help promote CMT awareness and to advocate for treatment. So there's Juliana and Michelle's husband, Steve. Javier Jover lives in Brownville, Texas, and he's a pulmonary and critical care physician and the first in his family to be diagnosed with CMT4J. He started having symptoms about 15 years ago, but was diagnosed 5 years ago. And Javier attended this meeting last year in search for answers to the many unknowns regarding CMT, and he's looking for channels of involvement in the development for a cure. Adrienne Weinstein, she lives in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and she comes from a family affected by CMT across multiple generations. Growing up with I think I silenced myself. Growing up with CMT, she had her own quiet struggles and surgeries. But when she lost her father and her brother too early to CMT, it made it clear that she needed to stop being silent on the sidelines and to do more to advocate for CMT solutions and cures. And then lastly, we have Eloise Schlafly, who lives in St. Louis, Missouri. She advises clients through comprehensive financial planning for her career. She has CMT1E, and she was diagnosed at 15 years old after not being able to keep up with her friends in sports. Her symptoms have gotten worse over time, and today she avoids stairs and uses braces to get around. In her own words, Eloise hates CMT. She is thrilled about the research being conducted and has big hopes for the researchers and patients in the room. So please join me in welcoming the panel. So I'm going to give everyone the opportunity to answer questions. They know we're on limited time, but I really want you all to hear from their different experiences. And the first one that I think is going to be most meaningful to you all is, what is the most disruptive experience in your life that was caused by CMT? And Adrienne, we can start with you. And if you'll say your name as you go down, since I didn't really highlight you, say your name and then you can answer the question if you don't mind.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. There's many disruptive parts of having a life with CMT, from I had hip dysplasia and had to have my pelvis reconstructed. But honestly, for my family, it's obviously been our early departure of my father and my brother. My dad, I would have loved for my dad to meet and get to know most of his grandkids. And I know that my brother would have loved to grow up with his beautiful children. And he died when they were both very, very young.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily Sander, and I think it is extremely difficult to quantify the disruption that CMT causes in one's life. But I would say that CMT really forced me to grow up very quickly and stole my innocence in my childhood, just because I had to go through all these medical procedures and issues at a very young age. So I would say that's the most disruptive thing so far.
Hi, Eloise Schlafly. I think for me, it's like Lily said, it's hard to tell you what the most disruptive is. You know, I can tell you, wow, I fell in the middle of a really busy street and there's a lot of people around trying to make sure I don't get run over by a car. That's disruption in your day, right? Or I fell walking on my way to class and there's nobody around me. I'm late to my exam. That's disruption, right? But I think for me, the most disruptive part of this thing is the daily grind of figuring out how I'm going to get through the day. So how am I going to get from A to B? Susan, you can tell me there's a chair on stage, but what I want to know is it a chair with armrests? Is it a sturdy chair? Is it a high chair? Is it a low chair? God forbid, are they on wheels? Is it a chair that rocks? What type of chair is it? And how am I going to negotiate that? So it's just the constant, how am I going to get to the next thing over the course of a day?
Hi, I'm Sital, Bhavsar, and I echo everything that everyone has said here. But for us, the most disruptive thing is we think we've reached a goal, only to have that goal be disrupted by this disease. So we're constantly having to stay ahead and try to anticipate the next disruption. And I think for us, that has been the most disruptive thing, is we just don't know what's coming next. And how do you prepare for something that when you don't know what's coming? So I think for us as a family, since this is the first time we've ever had anyone with this condition, that's been the issue for us.
So I'm Michelle. We lost our child. So there's a lot I can say about that in terms of disruptiveness. Everything changes. I think that one of the things I talk about is that after you lose a child, you fear everything and nothing. So the everything part is CMT. I'm a neurologist. I diagnosed her. I knew what to look for. I knew what to be afraid of. I took her, I had her see a pulmonologist even before there were any breathing problems, in anticipation of all that. And I couldn't stop this. So I think we are all vulnerable. This is, we didn't know we had this in my family. And so really this could happen to any of us. The being afraid of nothing part is, I think when something like this happens, you have to do something meaningful with your life. And so I became a palliative care physician because that's the field that really helped us. And so that, along with advocating for treatment for this terrible disease, is really what brings meaning.
Hi, my name is Javier. I'm a pulmonary critical care physician actively practicing in Brownsville, Texas. And I don't have the type of disruption in my life as the people who get it younger have it. I had a full life. I formed a family, developed a successful career. I'm still active, totally active. And then all of a sudden, when I'm thinking about enjoying life, taking it easier and enjoying my grandkids, this happened all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, because it took 15 years to get a diagnosis, which speaks a little bit also about the lack of knowledge that is out there. But I had a lot of disruption from the physical point of view, falls, weakness, foot drops, and the changes that come with that, how to adapt your life to continue going. What are you going to do? How are you going to get from one place to another? Are you going to be able to climb the stairs or not? Are you going to be able to do it without help? So that's why I concur with what my panelist partners are saying here today. It's a disruption in your life, in your goals, and the goals that you had thought that you were going to achieve, maybe they are now well, we'll see if we can get there. We don't know. And my main reason to be here is probably not too much for me, but I learned about this late in my life. And my worry comes now about my kids and my grandkids. I would love for them to have a hope if something like this happens to them, Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. So we're in the room with drug hunters. If there's one symptom that they could change for you, if there's one thing that they could do, what would it be?
There's a lot of things that I wish you could change, but I really think that the falling is most is something that I really would appreciate help with. I think that since CMT affects so many parts of your body and your physiology, but it's always been something that you have to be worried about, like from a young age. But the older I get, the worse the falls are, the more that I injure myself. And so I just think it becomes more and more dangerous over time. So that would be my top choice.
I would choose to focus on early intervention to stop the progression in its tracks. I can deal with a disability if I know how it affects me, but the reality is that I don't know what tomorrow holds, and that's terrifying as a 16-year-old and as any age. So I would really hope to focus on stopping the progression.
Yeah, I agree with Lily, or just slow it down, right? So I feel like the last 15 years has gone really fast. If you told me the next 30, it'll be a lot slower, that'd be fantastic. I think it's pretty easy to see what I've lost, but what we don't appreciate is what I still have. And I would love to keep as much of it as possible.
Again, echoing what they said, just stop the progression.
Same. I think in my family, we see the gamut. So obviously, I wish it were not fatal. I wish it did not affect the respiratory muscles. But my husband has a very mild form and he's got hearing loss, and that is a huge, that affects your life. So it's all of that.
I think that I know that the goal sometimes is to get to gene therapy to find a cure, but everybody here is agreeing that the slowing down the progression of the disease and being able at some point to make a plan in your life and know that you are going to be able to achieve that because you can control the progression of the disease, at least, even with your limitations. I think that is the major thing. If I can stop the weakness of my foot, if I can stop the advancement of the losing my fine motricity in my hands, or at least slow it down, that will be the most important thing for me, I guess.
Yeah, the way I think about it is the trains are coming and we don't know what the track is going to be. We don't know how fast it's going to be. We kind of have an idea, but we don't really know. and stopping that train would be pretty astounding. Okay, so let's pivot to clinical trials. We feel like we're on the brink of clinical trials. I see a lot of nodding heads in the room, which is awesome when you're around a bunch of drug hunters and they say, yes, yes. So let's talk about it for a moment. Would you be willing to participate? Do you have any elements of the clinical trial that would be deal breakers for you? Would you be willing to travel? Would you be willing to stay overnight in a hospital? Like when you think about a clinical trial, when you think about the risk of a clinical trial, maybe being being a pioneer with some of these drugs and taking those risks for yourself or for your children, can you talk for a moment a little bit about clinical trials and your willingness to participate and some things that would make it easier or harder?
I think that you've got a community of highly motivated patients, not only the people on the stage, but a lot of the other people in the room. So I think that most of us would take time off, cross mountains, do shots, do a lot of whatever you could throw at us. I think that most of us would be willing to do it. Because we're not only motivated by what this could change for us, it's often for like the entire swath of our family, to include kids. So I think that you've got a lot of highly motivated people throw stuff at us, and I think we'd be willing to do it.
I agree completely. I'm willing to do just about anything to participate in a clinical trial. I will say that I don't think that you can throw anything at us that is harder than what we deal with every day. And I think that the reality of not having a cure or treatment is much scarier than any clinical trial requirements that you would throw at us. So there is interest. Just please know that.
Yeah, agree. Sign me up, take my blood, ask me to cross country. I don't really care. I'm happy to do it. I think I have taken a lot of nerve conduction tests, and what I would say is there is real skill there. And so if you're going to have us take them, which happy to, that's fine. But have it be like a very well-trained person that knows what they're doing. We have weird results, right? And so if it's someone who's not trained, they don't know that results are weird and they're just going to turn up the velocity, and that hurts. But I'm happy to. I think on the gene therapy side, that's a little scarier. It's a little different. So I probably need a 3-page double-spaced English that I can read of like, what are you doing to me? And what are the possible, what are the probable, and what are the crazy side effects, so that I feel informed. But I'm in.
100% in. Definitely for any small molecule therapy, I think I would cross the world to have some sort of treatment. Also have some reservations about gene therapy just because my child is still so young. But that being said, I think by the time that came around, we would be a little bit older and still be willing to try. So.
I agree with what everyone has said. I'm going to put a little bit of a different spin on it. I give you my story. I think that our story went kind of accidentally public because we were talking about end of life issues for a 4-year-old. Nothing would make me happier to be able to tell the story about how we make this better and how we have treatment for this disease. I think that I agree. I think that as a clinician, when you go, to a big conference, it's always the patient stories that are, I think, the most interesting and really get people. And so I think not only are we willing to travel and give our bodies, I think we're all sharing our story.
As everybody is saying, we are all very committed to this and very involved in this right now, trying to get even more involved. That's the reason we are here, trying to get more involved and get more people and more companies or investors or investigators, researchers involved in this. And yes, we are ready to go for it. In my case, I'm a de novo case, I think, because there's nobody in my family with this. And I'm a weird, rare type, which is a J4, not very common, not a lot of investigation being done on it at this time. But I guess that if something is being done about 1A, I think we're going to get closer to J4 at some point. But we have to have a starting point, and I'm totally in for it.
Thank you. And my last question for you all, and then I want to open it up for some questions. But when you think about the future for yourself, for your family, in regards to your CMT, either with treatments or without treatments, what does that look like? And how do you think about the future?
I would really like to be hopeful for the future. I know that all of the momentum that's here gives me hope, but at the same time, I won't lie that I've been frustrated. The fact that this was discovered so long ago when the SMA chart was up there, I would love for us to be closing the gap faster, and that for there to be just more being done. I have a family where we have a lot of this across our family. And so I would love to be able to give everybody else hope, especially the younger people in my family. So yes, please, we really would appreciate you contributing to giving us more hope.
Adrienne, I share your frustration. I want to be hopeful for the future. I want to be able to dream of my life as normal teenagers do, and to be unlimited in my dreams by my CMT. So with the treatment, I see my life as wide open with all the opportunities available to me, but without, that's just not the case. So I want to be able to hope and to dream, and I appreciate your efforts in that.
Yeah, I think I'm hopeful. I'm excited. I mean, you guys are all here in this room trying to work on the same thing, so I'm pretty pumped. When I was originally diagnosed, we logged on to clinicaltrials.gov, not infrequently, and there were this many trials, maybe one, Dr. Shai's natural study history, which I signed up for and did. But now we have all of you guys working on it. Brian and Artie, you guys have the Falcon. Chris, you've got Shift. You're all working together. There's 5 clinical trials. So I'm hopeful and I'm excited because I don't want CMT to be part of my future at all, like zero. Let's just call it.
I think professionally, on a day-to-day basis, I see patients that are on a new drug for this and a new drug for that. And I'm very, very hopeful. And I, in fact, feel it deep down inside that I know treatments are coming very soon. And to answer your question about a world without treatments, to me, that's unacceptable, given that so many other conditions that have less impact or less disruption on your life are successfully being treated right now. That would just be unacceptable to me. And I don't.
I echo what everyone has said. It's amazing. I think that, I've been a neurologist for a long time, and just the even thought of having a conference like this is really amazing. So I'm hopeful, but the stakes are so high, and we know what the cost is. And so at the same time, you're almost afraid to be too hopeful sometimes, but overall hopeful.
Well, it took about 12 to 15 years for me to get a proper diagnosis. And from one place to another, even being a medical professional, of course, I was extremely busy, and maybe I was not following the appointments as often as I should have followed, but it took me a long time to get from one place to another. And I will say Baylor in Houston, and finally I ended up at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Finally, I got the diagnosis. And when I was at my last visit, I said, okay, we got the diagnosis. Yeah. Okay, now what? And the top neurologist at Mayo Clinic said, goes like this, so it's very discouraging and very frustrating to do all this thing, and then end up without having a hope at all. So I think that in my case, I'm 61 years of age, and I'm successful career and everything, but my worry, as I said before, and my goal would be, and my idea and my hope and my wish is about my kids and about my grandkids, that they have hope if this happens to be showing up in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, y'all, so much. I want to open up the floor for questions. So now you've got a little bit of a baseline and an understanding of what their experience is, but please ask your questions from the perspective of drug development or just even understanding the experience a little bit more. And Dr. Supporta, I see you've got a question.
Thank you so much for giving this insight. It's really, I think, invaluable to everybody in the audience. I have two kind of tough questions, but something that's really my main concern, kind of thinking about how to create treatments for CMT. So the first one, and both of them have a little bit to kind of to do what you guys kind of told us. So the first one is, how much risk is acceptable for a CMT treatment? Meaning, if there's a risk of death, if there's a risk of serious side effects, how much risk would you be willing to accept? And what's kind of related to that is, would you enroll your child in a trial? Because I think the way we are seeing treatments for CMT, the earlier we started a treatment, probably the most successful the treatment will be. So is a clinical trial for kids with CMT something that would be feasible from your perspective?
Can I say a few words about it? I think this is an extremely difficult question, because here we are trying to live longer, trying to live better. And we have kids that sometimes they are not diagnosed yet. And putting those words on the table and discuss what we're going to do with our families or with ourselves is very difficult. So it will take a long conversation. It even brings up, I don't know if it brings up some ethical or legal things, but it's very difficult. In my case, I don't know. I'm willing to be there for the clinical trials, but if you tell me, hey, if you're gonna die, I don't want to have an appendix removed if I'm gonna die. It's just there's a risk. There's always a risk. Yeah. So I know. So I cannot answer that question right this moment. I'm really willing to give everything I can to go for a clinical trial. And if I have to discuss about putting my kids in a trial, I will have to, if they are adults already, I will discuss it with them as adults and see what they want to be, because it's going to be them, but if they are children and they are not in a legal age to make a decision by themselves, it's a long conversation that we need to have with the investigators and in the family as well, I guess. I don't know if I...
Sital?
I'd like to say something to that. I think it would, for me personally, since my daughter is still so young, it would depend on how far the disease has progressed by the time the trial comes along. Right now, probably not take some of the more severe risks because she is still relatively functional and can do most things. But ask me a few years from now, if she's more debilitated, then maybe we'd be willing to take a higher risk. So it just depends on, I think, factoring in the progression for each individual case. I know my answer would change based on that.
Any other questions from the audience? Oh, yep. Hi, Kenny.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Great.
So first and foremost, I think everybody in this room, I can speak for them when I say that we're indebted to you taking the time to come here and share your stories with us. A room full of scientists, researchers, patient advocacy groups. We're here to help you. We're here because of you. And we can't let that go unnoticed. So I thank you for sharing your stories. So I'm a CMTer. One of the things I hate most about my CMT is my breathing. If there was one thing I could change, it would be my breathing. So I'd like to ask each of you, what's the one thing that you would like to change about CMT, whether that be something you experienced personally, whether that be something in the system, access to healthcare, access to therapies? What's your one thing that you wish was different or could be done differently, could be done better?
It's okay, we got you, Javier. Yeah. Lily, is your microphone on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also say that I think the healthcare system is so difficult to navigate with CMT. There's so much misinformation from physicians who we're supposed to trust about what CMT is and the diagnosis itself and the treatments or things you can do to help. So one of the things other than progression, I would say I want physicians to be on the same page and to give accurate information to us, because it's so frustrating when we're given misinformation.
I would also say I agree with you on the pulmonary effects. That is something that I will agree, kind of along those lines of progression. That is what ultimately killed my father, is the progression to the pulmonary area and to those muscles. And, I think that that's just something that's a little bit terrifying to look forward to, or to look towards, as I know that Michelle knows more intimately than anybody else in this room. So, that is one element of it that I wish that we could change, but I would also echo just the fact of having better education across kind of the clinical space so that people recognize a lot of these symptoms as interconnected prior to us kind of going down multiple rabbit holes that we don't need to go down.
All right, we have time for one more question. Is there one out there? I see someone's got, oh, you have one, Rob? No? Yeah, Rachel, hi.
Hi, thank you all for your time and for your contributions. I wanted to hear your views on newborn screening. So the advantages you would get, or your child would get a diagnosis at birth, but this would be for symptoms that would not manifest typically in early childhood. So you know something, but you can't quite, even if there's a therapy, it wouldn't be applicable right away. So just your views on potential newborn screening.
I would be all for it. I mean, as I'm the mother of two, and I was just like anxious about it. Just like I was looking for it anyway, you know what I mean? And so I went out and kind of got evaluations done myself. But I mean, just having that peace of mind at a newborn screening stage would be fantastic. The other thing is like just looking that way your physician and the parents and everybody else knows what to look for early. They know to look for like pelvic and hip dysplasia things early. They know to look for, I mean, any of the other myriad ways that it can manifest. But I think that earlier education is just unequivocally better.
I had a spontaneous mutation, so no one in my family had it, and I didn't develop symptoms until 15. So if there's not something that I could have changed at newborn, I don't know that my mom would say I really care about newborn screening, but that's my perspective of a de novo case.
I would really love that. I think even if you're facing a potentially devastating form, and even if there's more treatment, just it can bring you into community, because at least you know what you're dealing with. And I think that's one of the things about CMT. It can be very isolating. I think, the SMA community is very strong. I think with us, when we struggle with even getting a diagnosis and knowing what this is, just being able to be part of a community and, I think would be really helpful.
All right, thank you, everyone. And thank you so much to you all for sharing your stories.
With one question.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
One question.
Rob did have a question, y'all, if you
Yes,
wouldn't mind,
sorry.
just one quick question from our virtual audience.
Some technical problem, sorry. Aside from functional limb weakness, what other symptoms that you attribute to CMT do you wish you had more information about?
So aside from your functional limb weakness, what other symptoms do you wish you knew more about?
One that, I mean, this is so aside from again, muscle weakness, but another one that has really been bothering me more and more in the past few years is pupil dilation. Like I'm having a lot of trouble with, because my pupils are weak and don't like respond as quickly. I have a lot of trouble with, like sunlight going in and out of light. Those are kind of some of the more, I feel like less well described or less well understood.
So I had very little education about the lesser known symptoms of my type of CMT just because it is so rare. So I've had to talk to other people with my type, and we've had to like compare notes and been like, wait, you have this? I do too. Like, and then I just found out a year ago that I'm at risk for hearing loss. So it's like, I wish I knew these things. And I wish there was like more education on the lesser known symptoms.
I'm going to say sleep apnea and dysphagia because those are both things that you can do something about.
I think that the fear is more than anything else is the respiratory muscle dysfunction. And we don't know much about it because my type also is a rare type, so there's not much said about it, and it was mostly described in children than in adults. So, but the fear that you have is that at some point you're not going to be able to breathe, and that is the more fearful type of thing that besides the limb weakness.